Alright, let's get started on this lamp. For one, it's originally from IKEA. Let's give this a go. The Harte. Harte?
Horte.
Nope. Originally $17.99, comes in white and black, which for me doesn't matter, but the more you know. The main criteria I needed for this project was a bendable or bent neck lamp. It's like the bent neck lady. And a wide base. As for what you may have guessed or not, this is the lamp that I'm wanting to try my hand at. In various colors, there are more. I think every color actually. I did buy this not knowing about how the top portion worked. As soon as I saw the base, I got really excited and then found out not only does it swivel, but it is fully adjustable. I'm doing the hand movements right now, but you cannot see. For the paint can portion, I needed it to be plastic because I cannot be trusted with a lamp made from glass. I found these at the dollar store. They are planters and $1.50. Though I should have tested it at the thrift store, instead I got too excited, once again as I said, and as I do. So I tested it now and luckily it worked. I did a dry fit to make sure the planter cup would fit over as I needed it to, fully encapsulating the light source. I also used this time to find out that this was an LED light, which is helpful so I don't burn my entire house down. I made a small mark to show where the lamp head went within the cup. And then my plan was to actually spray this its final inside color, which eventually you'll find out wasn't the case. But let's just say this was the primer, and I painted it white to prime it. Yeah.
It's on me!
As for the base of the lamp, it's going to be made of basically garbage because I am a raccoon. First layer being leftover styrofoam from another project. I placed the lamp down and outlined it, giving it a little bit of allowance at the back and a squiggly allowance around the front. As if a spill. Go figure. And with a hot wire styrofoam cutter, which I wish I had had when I was making my Beetlejuice tombstone, but here we are. Then back at it again with the marker to retrace the inside. This is the first layer of the spill, yes, but the lamp will not actually be sitting on top of it, but rather inside of it. So I need to account for the shape and size. Before going further, since I had the lamp down and the biggest spill piece placed, I wanted to add a secondary layer of spill, which would be made from the excess cut off another project, which you may remember from my Ramona Flowers hammer. At this point, I've switched up the foam wire cutter head to a bending style hot knife.
Gotta say, I'm nervous about this. I've never used this one before.
Which luckily happened to be the exact width that I needed to cut out. Once I had the moat cut out, quote-unquote moat, I had placed the lamp back into place and got the topper ready, which was simply an off-cut piece of cardstock. I used the foam I had just cut as a template, but when I cut it out a little bit smaller as I would need it to be tapered in. I ended up cutting it further tapered later on anyways, as I would be tapering the foam with the foam cutter once again at, I would say, like an estimated 45-degree angle. To add on the cardstock, I just added a generous layer of glue onto the entire bottom with the lamp in place. And then cut the paper to, again, the approximate like 45-degree angle as well. While this was drying, I had to glue around all the sides to seal the foam in and add more texture and adhesion to the sides. I then clamped it down to dry overnight. The next day, I used the roughest side of the foam mat to place glue onto and then place it down, also clamping it. This time letting it dry for just a few hours, and then went in with some spray foam. This was very trial and error, as I've never worked with spray foam in the capacity that I am in this project, whereas like the object I was applying it to was 1, smooth, or 2, gravity was involved. But I started out with a small amount on the bottom to create the third and final layer of the spill, and then worked my way up to find out that this was not a viable option. So I let what stayed on do its thing and waited for a few hours for it to get hard on the outside but soft on the inside, and pressed the edges down to make them more spill-like, instead of just like existing, you know? Then picked up the piece and placed it down onto plastic so gravity would work in my favor instead of against me. I built it up and out. Once again, after a few hours, I stood it up and shaped it better, bringing the adjustable head back to where I wanted it to actually go, and I shaped the foam a little bit better as well. I then took the plastic off to reveal the underside, giving that a chance to actually fully dry, being exposed to the air. And preemptively placing painter's tape over the actual lighting piece and cutting it down to size. I added a generous line of hot glue into the planter pod and then stuck that onto the lamp. Used more hot glue after that to actually secure it a little bit better, now that I actually knew where it would be secured. Then it started cutting piece by piece with a very sharp knife. Some might say too sharp, like the me that lives in this clip. Ow! Remember kids, don't cut towards yourself. Keep your hands as far away from the sharp blade as possible. I did go back and forth between cutting some down when I actually trusted myself with the blade again, and adding more hot glue. And again, because gravity does not like to work with me, I added some hot glue onto a silicone spatula, let it mostly dry down, and then used that to add onto the spill. Once the foam and the hot glue were fully dried, it was time to add the magic ingredient, plaster of Paris, which in the end will give it a much smoother finish, as well as kind of like a rock hard finish. There's definitely instructions when working with this, and I definitely winged the measurements completely, but it all worked out. I added a handful, literally scoop of plaster alongside some wood glue to give it a little extra gooiness to work with, and strength, and then water. Then just drown the damn thing. I did this with a few coats, being sure to cover everything. Then when the mixture got a little bit thicker, used that viscosity to fill in the edges and gaps. Even though the layers of spill were cut in style at a 45-ish degree angle, I also used the thicker formula to create more of a sloping effect. And a flat bottom. And of course, between each layer drying, I also cracked the plaster because it scratched my brain in a good way. I focused first on the front and then the back, and then flipped it on its back again and let the plaster sit in the recessed areas to make it as smooth as possible. Alongside using the other end, like the pokey end of a paintbrush, to actually like let the plaster kind of seep into the portion that had the hot glue and was connected to the planter pot. As I had put some plaster on the bottom edge to give it a flat bottom, I had to break those pieces off. Not sure why I decided that karate chopping it would be my best bet, but here we are. I used a very coarse sanding sponge to take off the drips, round out the edges because some of them are very, very sharp, and just give it an overall cleanup. It was at this point I had actually realized that something had happened along the way, and it was a little topsy-turvy. So I flipped it and took that little piece off that was making it so. I know the lighting here is weird, but I want to show you the difference between the start with the spray foam and now. Still a little lumpy, but much, much better. Before it was time to fully cover it, I sanded the outside of the planter pot down to give the paint something to stick to. And then taped off the inside using the painter's tape. And the pieces of the same plastic that I had just used before. This is where we find out that the initial white spray paint was just going to be a base coat, or like a primer instead of the actual color, because it started coming off with the painter's tape. Anyways, once I blocked off all the not wanting to paint them parts or areas, I placed my spray paint sheet down and under and began. Yes, it may seem a little bit dark at first, but it gets brighter and less dark. Trust the process. Once that first layer was dry, I flipped onto its back and then used the pieces of plastic to guard what was on the inside, and I sprayed that. At this point, I knew that I would be painting the inside anyway, so it didn't matter that much. And then once I'd taken the tape off,
I don't even want to talk about it.
I painted the inside with a white acrylic paint, a few layers, just to make everything seamless, or as seamless as possible. Then once that was fully dry, I used resin to seal it all together, making sure not to get any onto the piece of tape I had put down over the light. Once that was fully cured, which was overnight, it was finally time to take it off the next day. I was hoping it would be more satisfying, but sadly... And here we go, a lamp Carly and Spencer Shay would hopefully approve of. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. See you next one. Bye, guys.